We were halfway through the lemon rosemary chicken when Dad stood up and tapped his wine glass with the back of his fork. The sound rang sharp against the soft hum of conversation, and the table fell silent. Jace looked up, his expression caught somewhere between smug and expectant. To Jace, Dad began lifting his glass for graduating with distinction. We couldn't be prouder. Mom's eyes shimmered with pride, her hand already gripping Jace's forearm, like she was holding on to the last good thing in her life. My brother grinned and raised his glass in return. Then, Dad reached into the inside pocket of his blazer and pulled out a small manila envelope. He handed it to Jace with a wink. Jace opened it, paused, then laughed out loud. "You didn't." "Oh, but we did," Dad said. "It's the deed, the house on Ashwood Lane. It's yours now, son." There was a beat of silence where even the air felt stunned. Then Mom clapped her hands together and let out a soft, breathy, "Oh, Everett," like he'd just proposed to her again. Jace looked at me across the table as if expecting me to say something. Congratulate him. Cheer. I swallowed a chunk of dry resentment and forced a smile. "That's amazing, Jace." Dad turned toward me, then still holding his glass, still standing. "As for you, Callista," he said, "rent's due starting next week. $800 a month. You're an adult now." I blinked. My fork slipped from my fingers and hit the plate with a small metallic clang. "What?" He didn't flinch. "You're 22. It's time you start contributing. You want to be treated like an adult, start acting like one." I stared at him. "Why do I pay while he gets gifted a house?" His eyes never wavered. "Because he's worth it." My mother didn't meet my gaze. She was too busy adjusting the cloth napkin in her lap. I looked at Jace again. He had the decency to look uncomfortable, but not enough to say anything. He never said anything. I picked up my fork. Cut the next piece of chicken smaller than necessary. Chewed, swallowed, smiled. The hollow kind of smile you wear when something inside you has just cracked so quietly that no one hears it. Not even you. I kept chewing as if everything was fine. As if the ground beneath me hadn't just given out. I didn't say a word after dinner. I helped Mom clear the dishes like always, stacked them carefully in the sink, scrubbed the pans. No one noticed that I washed the wine glasses slower than usual, or that I dried my hands with the towel clenched so tightly it left marks on my fingers. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it hummed above me, spinning in endless circles like the way I'd been stuck in this house my whole life. And like always, the memories found me when everything else was quiet. I was 14 the first time I realized the rules here didn't apply the same to everyone. Jace had taken Dad's BMW for a joyride with his friends. He was 16 and stupid and showing off, and he clipped the Hendersons' mailbox just 3 blocks from our house. I was in my room that night, headphones on, studying for a biology test. When Dad came home and saw the front of the car dented, he didn't yell at Jace. He walked straight into my room and stood over my desk. "Why didn't you stop him?" he asked, calm but cold. I didn't even know I said. I was studying. You always know what your brother's doing. That was the moment it clicked in this house. If Jace made a mistake, it became my failure too, for not preventing it, not predicting it, not shielding him from the consequences. When Jace went off to college, Mom and Dad paid for everything: tuition, housing, meal plans, even gas money. Meanwhile, I was juggling 2 part-time jobs and online classes, taking night shifts at a bookstore and weekends at a diner because online degrees are more flexible, honey. Flexible meant cheaper. It meant no dorms, no support, no safety net. When I told them I'd started a small jewelry shop online, selling handmade earrings and rings, I was proud. It was the first thing that felt like mine. At dinner, I brought it up casually, hoping maybe, just maybe, they'd ask about it. Dad didn't even look up from his reading glasses. He just smirked. "Still playing pretend with beads and craft glue, huh?" Then he turned to Jace, who had just gotten a B in macroeconomics, and asked about internships. Mom nodded like it was all perfectly normal. And me, I went back to the sink. Back to pretending I didn't feel like I was constantly being erased, one small insult at a time. These moments, they weren't dramatic. No screaming, no slammed doors. Just 1,000 paper cuts over years. each one small enough to excuse, small enough to ignore, until they weren't. By the time Jace got the deed to a house and I got a rent bill, the blade had already been buried so deep I didn't even bleed anymore. I just went silent, the kind of silence that comes right before a shift, before a storm, before something breaks. And by the end of that week, I had decided exactly what needed to. The decision came quietly the way most irreversible ones do, not with a fight or a slammed door, but in the way I folded my clothes differently that night, rolling them instead of stacking them like I was preparing for movement, not storage. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I wrote, not a goodbye, a ledger. It started with simple lines. Birthday party age 10. No guests. I cleaned up alone. Age 14. Took the blame for Jace's wreck. Bought groceries during Mom's illness, no payback. Gave Jace my laptop charger before his finals. Took my exam on 18%. Jewelry business dismissed as pretend. Never asked how much I made. Then it grew. Into categories. Into years. I filled both sides of the paper. Underneath the list, I wrote a number, an estimate of everything I had contributed. Grocery runs. Utility bills. Holiday gifts bought on waitress tips. Small invisible offerings to keep their lives running smoothly. It was more than $9,000. At the bottom, I wrote just one sentence. You won't find me unless I want to be found. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I folded it once cleanly and placed it under a magnet on the fridge where Mom always kept the grocery list, right between milk and paper towels. Next came the packing. I gave myself a limit one bag. If it didn't fit, it didn't matter. Jeans, sweatshirts, toothbrush, my laptop, the velvet jewelry box I kept under my bed full of prototypes and orders I never had the nerve to ship. And from the back of my closet, the old floral tin where I had hidden the leather-bound journals Grandma Etta gave me just before she passed. Everyone thought they had been misplaced during the estate cleanout, but she had handed them to me directly wrapped in brown paper. Read them when you need to remember who you are, she'd said. I hadn't opened them in 2 years. Not since the night after her funeral, when Dad declared all of Grandma's remaining assets were to be handled responsibly, which in his world meant by him. But I had a feeling those journals would matter more now than ever. When I zipped the bag closed, it didn't feel heavy. It felt honest, like everything I was taking belonged to me finally. I slid it under the bed and turned off the light. I still had a few days left to act normal, but I wouldn't be staying long enough to finish the week. The house was still asleep when I slipped out of bed. My phone read 3:58 a.m. I moved slowly, careful not to step on the creaky floorboard near my closet, the one Dad always threatened to fix, but never did. I dressed in the dark jeans hoodie worn sneakers. Nothing special, just quiet. My bag was ready. It had been ready for 3 days. Downstairs, the kitchen was bathed in the soft glow of the street lamp outside. I stood there for a moment listening. No footsteps, no coughing, no reminders that I was still under their roof. I walked to the fridge and removed the grocery list from under the magnet. In its place, I slid the folded letter, the ledger lined with 2 decades of neglect. I didn't add a post-it, didn't underline anything. If they wanted to understand, they'd read it. If not, they'd do what they always did, pretend it never existed. The Greyhound station was 6 blocks away. I walked. Not because I had to, but because I wanted the cold morning air to wake me fully, to remind my body that I was doing something real. Each step away from the house felt lighter, like I was peeling off layers I didn't know I'd been carrying. At the station, I paid in cash. 1 ticket to Willamette Springs. No return. The waiting area was nearly empty, just me, a sleepy teenager clutching a guitar case, and a woman rocking a toddler who wouldn't settle. I picked a bench near the corner, kept my head down, and breathed through the nerves buzzing beneath my skin. Miss Yara hadn't seen me in years, not since high school. But when I reached out last week, just one message saying, "Can I come?" she'd replied in less than an hour. Always. The bus pulled up at 4:09. I boarded at 4:11. I didn't look back. I already knew what I was leaving. I just didn't know yet what I was going toward. Miss Yara opened the front door before I even knocked. She stood there in pajama pants and a faded college hoodie, hair pulled into a high bun, arms folded like she'd been waiting her whole life for me to show up. "You look like someone who hasn't slept in days," she said. "I haven't. Then we'll fix that. But first, get in here." Her house smelled like cinnamon and laundry warm and worn in. I hadn't realized how much I needed that smell until it wrapped around me. She made tea the same kind she used to sneak into the guidance office during finals week when I was 17 and spiraling. No questions at first, just warmth and space. But after the tea, I told her everything. From the graduation dinner to the rent demand to the letter I left behind. She didn't interrupt. She just listened, nodding slowly, eyes steady. When I finally stopped talking, I pulled out the journals. They were heavier than I remembered. Grandma Etta gave these to me the year before she died, told me to read them when I was ready. Yara opened one, gently thumbing through the pages with reverence. She was always meticulous, she said. Look at this: dated entries, categorized notes, bank ledgers, legal correspondence. She paused, finger resting on a paper clipped to one page. This isn't just journaling, she said. This is documentation. Look here, this trust fund. She named you the beneficiary. And this was signed the month before your hospitalization. I leaned forward. But I never saw any of that. I never got anything. Yara's expression changed, sharpened. I think someone may have intercepted it. When you were under medical care, it's possible your father took control of your affairs. The air in my chest stilled. It had always felt like I was dismissed, forgotten. But this was something else entirely. This was theft. Saul Halberg didn't look like the kind of man who took on family fraud cases. He wore hiking boots with his suit and kept granola bars in the side pocket of his briefcase. But when he looked through Grandma Etta's journals, his entire demeanor shifted. Precise, sharp, focused. This isn't guesswork, he said, laying out the documents across Yara's kitchen table. These are originals. She named you the beneficiary of the trust in clear binding terms. No ambiguity. He slid one page closer to me. This is the kicker: your father filed for power of attorney just 2 weeks into your hospital stay. I stared at the signature. My name in my own handwriting. Or almost. It's not mine, I said quietly. It looks close, but I never signed anything. Saul nodded. A forgery, most likely. And right here, he authorized a transfer from the trust account to a college fund. That fund paid for your brother's tuition. The words landed like a punch. All of it. Every semester. Room, board, books. He used your grandmother's money intended for your independence to fund someone else's future. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I think I have something else. The voicemail had been buried in my inbox for a year, saved out of a strange, unsettled instinct. Jace, drunk and rambling after some party I didn't attend. Dad says not to tell you. Says the money was better used. But I know it wasn't right, Cal. I know it was yours. Saul listened twice, then pressed pause. That's not just guilt. That's a recorded admission. I didn't say anything. My mouth was too dry. He leaned back and looked at me, not with pity, but with purpose. They didn't just take your voice. They left fingerprints all over it. I pressed my palms flat against the table, grounding myself in the solid truth of it all. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was legal, and I was ready to fight. The first notice went out on a Thursday. Saul filed the initial complaint with the county clerk that morning, and by evening, official letters had been delivered to my parents' house via courier. A formal notice of investigation for trust misappropriation, financial fraud, and unauthorized use of power of attorney. By Friday morning, my phone, quiet for days, lit up like a warning flare. Missed calls from numbers I recognized but didn't answer. The diner where I used to waitress. The bookstore manager who had hugged me the day I gave my notice. My old roommate from freshman year. All of them relaying the same message your dad's been calling around. Asking where you are. Says it's urgent. Urgent, I thought. Now it's urgent. By Saturday, my mom's Facebook profile was updated with a vague post. If anyone has heard from Callista, please message me. It's a sensitive family matter. We just want to talk. Underneath, comments piled up, some sympathetic, others nosy. A few old neighbors offered prayers. One asked if I'd run off to get married. I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in putting on a performance for the audience they always seemed to care about more than me. Then came the real rupture. Late Sunday night, Yara knocked on my bedroom door with her phone in hand. "You need to see this." A local news report already circulating online. Prominent businessman's son arrested in DUI incident. The mugshot hit me harder than I expected. Jace, glassy-eyed, hair-messy expression, empty. The report said he had driven through the outdoor seating area of a cafe near campus, knocking over 3 metal tables and a bike rack. No injuries. Charges pending. Public intoxication, destruction of property, and resisting arrest, Yara read aloud. For a moment, all I could do was stare at the screen. The golden boy wasn't golden anymore. I remembered every time I'd heard Mom say Jace is under pressure. Every time Dad excused his mistakes with, "He's just figuring things out." And I remembered every time I had to be the stable one. That stability was gone now, not just mine, theirs. The house I left behind had always looked perfect from the outside. Pressed lawn, coordinated curtains, smiling Christmas cards. But now the cracks were showing, and for the first time I wasn't the one expected to hold it all together. Saul said I didn't need to be there, that we could handle everything through legal channels, but I wanted to look Everett Marin in the eye when his world tilted. We arrived mid-morning. The lawn was uncut. The porch light was still on from the night before. The house felt like it had stopped pretending to be perfect. He answered the door in slacks and a dress shirt but no tie. His sleeves were rolled halfway, like he was halfway to being the man he used to be. He didn't greet us. "You brought a lawyer," he said flatly. "No," I replied. "I brought consequences." We sat in the living room, though I stayed standing. Saul placed the file on the coffee table papers, clipped tabs marked voice recording transcribed and ready. "You know what this is," I said. "Grandma's trust, the forged power of attorney, the tuition money. My signature you faked, my future you redirected." He glanced at the file but didn't open it. "You think this makes you strong?" he asked. "No. Living through it and still being here does." He laughed bitter and small. "You always thought you were so clever. Just like Etta. Always digging, always judging." I felt the heat rise, but I stayed steady. She believed in me. "You didn't." "She scared the hell out of me," he said suddenly. "Just like you. I couldn't stand how much you reminded me of her." He looked away down at the rug, and for a moment I thought he might say something real. But he didn't. "I want a signed confession," I said, "and a public statement acknowledging what you did to me and to Grandma's estate. That's the only way this ends quietly." His mouth twisted like he was about to argue, but he didn't. He nodded. Once. It was enough. For now. Saul collected the file and I walked out without looking back. It wasn't closure, but it was a crack in the armor, and sometimes that's where the light gets in. 3 weeks after the confrontation, the court ruled in our favor. The trust was restored in full plus damages for the years of misuse. Saul handed me the final paperwork with a quiet nod, like he knew it wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about being believed. Grandma Etta's voice echoed through every line of those journals, organized, sharp, deliberate. She had seen it all coming, and she'd left me the tools to survive it. With the funds, I didn't run off or disappear into some quiet retreat. I sat at Yara's kitchen table and wrote out a proposal for something that felt impossible just a month before. We called it Inheritance Isn't Always Money, a legal aid nonprofit for young adults facing financial abuse, co-founded by the 2 women my father tried hardest to erase. Yara brought heart and vision. I brought structure and fire. We started small, just 1 donated office and a part-time paralegal, but the applications poured in. People who had stories like mine only know Grandma Etta to leave them breadcrumbs. The first donation we ever received came from someone anonymous. Just a note attached. "Your strength gave me mine. Keep going." I read it 3 times and tucked it into the back of Grandma's last journal. She had left me more than money. She left me a mirror, a map, a legacy that didn't live in wealth but in rebuilding what someone tried to destroy, and this time I would make sure no one could take it away again. The folding chairs were full. The room smelled like coffee and hope. I stood at the front of our little workshop holding the last letter Grandma Etta ever wrote to me. Sometimes the ones they overlook are the ones born to build something better. I looked up and saw a young woman in the back row, eyes shining like she'd just heard her own truth for the first time. I smiled, steady and sure. They gave Jace a house, but I built a life no one can evict me from.